Hello and welcome back to the Odds Now YouTube channel for our final EFL betting show of the season. I've said that a couple of times already, haven't I? Gab just keeps coming back. I can't get rid of him. He pops up with one, and I have to entertain him again. But in all seriousness, we did a quite in-depth preview a couple of weeks ago, Gab, didn't we? Ahead of the EFL playoffs. We're now down to the finals, which all take place across this upcoming bank holiday weekend. Championship, League One and League Two. There is one more promotion spot up for grabs in each division. And we've got three finals to dive into and hopefully point you in the direction of some value bets as well. So just to confirm that lineup for you, we have Sunderland taking on Sheffield United in the Championship playoff final on Saturday, I think, Gab.
Yeah.
And Leyton Orient Charlton in League One on the Sunday, and AFC Wimbledon and Walsall round things off for us there as well in League Two. So it's an intriguing lineup. I think I was having a look back at our predictions, Gab. We did a pretty good job. We both went for Sunderland and Sheffield United in the Championship, who've obviously come through their ties. I think I had Leyton Orient for the upset, which, you know, penalties is always a roll of the dice, but we'll take it. And we both went for Charlton. The one I got wrong, unfortunately, was the one I was most financially invested in. I had Chesterfield at big prices, and Walsall did a job on them. And AFC Wimbledon sneaked through against Notts County. So anyway, what we're going to do over the next 20 minutes, half an hour, is just take a deep look at each final, give our thoughts and give our best bets. So we'll kick off with the Championship because it is the first game to be played of the three. Undoubtedly the most valuable in terms of monetary terms, and a place in the Premier League awaits Sunderland taking on Sheffield United. And these odds on your screen on the banners are the to qualify. So it's not just the 90 minutes. Very important when you're betting on a playoff match to realise that if you go on your normal bet slip and press Sunderland or whatever, if you're still seeing a price for the draw, your bet will be settled in the 90 minutes. I would always recommend, unless you're specifically wanting to target a team to win in 90 minutes, get the to qualify price, because how many times do we see these games go into extra time and penalties, and you don't want to be falling foul of that. And there's not a huge, it's just taking the draw out of the equation, really. So you've got to be doing that, I think, in most situations. So Sunderland are 6-5 to qualify here, and Sheffield United quite strong favourites at 4-6. Before I go to Gab for some more in-depth analysis of this game, let's just have a little bit of a summary of how we've got to this stage. Sheffield United making short work of Bristol City, it should be said, in the semi-final. 6-0 win on aggregate in the end, about as emphatic as it gets in the playoffs. They were helped by a little bit of a controversial red card in the first leg, but ultimately I think the class gap did tell, as we predicted it would. We said we thought Sheffield United were the safest of all the teams in the EFL playoffs to get through their semi-final, and so it proved. Sunderland, in contrast, they had a very tight scrap with Coventry, didn't they? That two back and forth. And I did, to be honest, I got a home hands up here. I think Coventry, for large spells, were the better side across the two legs. There was some costly defensive errors, particularly in that first leg for them. But Sunderland, there wasn't a lot between the sides. It was ultimately decided by a very late header from Dan Ballard. And I was really pleased to see Sunderland get to Wembley. I think they've given a lot to the division this season. And I think this is a fitting final, actually. Probably the two sides that throughout the course of the season looked the most likely to disrupt the top two. I think it's fair to say, and they both get their crack at stealing that promotion. Obviously, it's been a difference in waiting time for a return to the Premier League. Sheffield United looking to bounce back at the first attempt, having been relegated with just 16 points in 23-24. Better get my seasons right there. While Sunderland, they've had a long time out, haven't they, out of the top flight, and they've even had a 4-season stint in League One since they were last in the Premier League. So they'll be looking to return to the top table for the first time in a long time. In terms of team news, clean bill of health, I think, for Sheffield United. Sunderland have a slight concern over Patrick Roberts, who had a bit of a calf problem by the looks of it in that semi-final with Coventry. They'll be hoping he'll be fine. He's a very dynamic winger, isn't he? Always capable of opening things up, particularly on that big Wembley pitch, you would think. Gab, it's really nicely poised. As I say, Sheffield United, the betting favourites, but the two games in the league season, it was one win apiece. There's not a lot between these two sides. How are you seeing this one?
I think it's going to be very tight. I think both teams, in different ways, have shown real solidity in their playoff semi-final ties to get to this stage. Sheffield United in their ability to keep Bristol City very much at arm's length, and I think that takes real organisation. I think Michael Cooper, one of the best goalkeepers in the league, that's another reason to think it might be a low-scoring game. But against Bristol City, he was only tested in the first sort of half an hour of the second leg against Bristol City. Otherwise, it was a very comfortable tie for him. And whereas I think for Sunderland, they showed possibly the same quality in a different way. They were very solid themselves against Coventry City, but more in the way of last-ditch defending and throwing themselves in front of shots and really battling to that aggregate victory with Dan Ballard scoring that dramatic winner in the last minute, which was an amazing moment. So I think both teams have got a really solid shape. I think Regis Lebris been fairly conservative with his approach to games with a kind of 4-4-2 shape, very tight, 2 backs of 4, and then giving Elisa Mayenda and Wilson Isidore the freedom to counterattack. Fascinating point here is going to be, does he stick with that? Does he bring in Romain Mundell, who came off the bench in the semi-final second leg and made a real difference and could bring a bit of more extra pace and flair out wide? We don't know quite. I think he might be a fitness stat for this game, so that's a little bit in doubt. Same with Patrick Roberts. So it's going to be really interesting to see how Sunderland play it from their point of view. And then from Sheffield United's point of view, they're probably not going to be able to go over the top for Kiefer Moore in the same way that they did against Bristol and Tyrese Campbell, of course, like they did against Bristol City, because of how compact Sunderland are going to be with Dan Neil and Dan Ballard, who have been so imperious in that defensive unit. So again, it's going to be fascinating to see whether they can find other angles. So I think it's either going to be 0-0 or it's going to be decided by a solitary goal. I've edged with Sunderland, but I think my sort of feeling on no goals in the 90 minutes or even after extra time or 1 goal probably lends me quite nicely onto your pick for the game as well, Matt, doesn't it?
Yeah, so just to give you a little bit of variety to your life, what we've done here is Gab has kind of picked his team to qualify and put those 3 up, and we'll have a treble for you at the end of the show as well. I've tried to go down, give you an alternative line of thought, but in this particular occasion, me and Gab are very aligned with how we see this game going. I'm going to go with under 1.5 goals in the 90 minutes, just to stress. So if it was 0-0 and finished 2-0 in extra time, you're still back to winning bet. This will be settled in 90 minutes. And that's 7-4 with Paddy Power. And there's a little bit of the matchup. I think it's a very tight matchup, and I think a lot on the line. But this is also a historical standpoint with championship playoff finals. They're typically very, very cagey affairs. We've not seen over 3.5 goals in the championship playoff final since 2011. Which tells you all you need to know. So if you're expecting a goal fest here, you may well be disappointed. And the 1-0 correct scoreline is a recurring theme as well. 11 of the last 21 championship playoff finals have finished 1-0. Wow. So, I did consider Dutching the 1-0 scorelines here. Sunderland 1-0 and Sheffield United 1-0. Dutching, for anyone that's not familiar, would be you can kind of use a calculator online, which will tell you exactly how much you need to stake on each thing to get the same return regardless of the outcome. And I think that's a useful tool in these kind of games when you have a clear opinion of how it's going to pan out, with not necessarily being committed enough to say I think they'll win or I think they'll win, but I just think it's going to be low scoring. But no, the under 1.5 goals with Paddy Power at 7-4. There wasn't a massive difference between Dutching the 1-0s and back in this, but the beauty of this one is you get the 0-0 onside as well, which I also think is a very likely scoreline. So that would be why I would lean that way.
Thanks for Dutching base.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Glad to get a few months off of this. I tell you. But that is where we're both leaning, I think, Gavin. A tight scoring affair. Just before we move on from this game, it's an interesting one for me. I suppose Sunderland, to me, they've got a lot of match winners in their ranks, a lot of explosive players. But you would have to say Sheffield United have the edge in terms of big game experience, Premier League experience. Which of those do you think is more important in this kind of scenario?
It's a great question. I think that if Gus Harmer turns on the style, he's that box office footballer that could really take control of this final, especially with his combination play with Harrison Burrows, and that could be really difficult for Sunderland to stop. But I also think Sheffield United could be weak on the right-hand side, where they've got Hamza Chowdhury, who's a midfielder at right back. They might have Ryan Brewster, who's a striker on the right wing, and you're sort of looking at that. And, so, if Sunderland are able to try and put more of their energy on nullifying Sheffield United's left side, and then they have to go over to the right, and they might be a bit more limited there. So I think that's possibly worth bearing in mind. And one of the reasons why I'm just thinking with the counter-attacks that threat that Sunderland have, because they've got Romain Mundle if he's fit, they've got Elisa Mienda, and they've got Wilson Isidore, all three of whom could be a real counter-attacking threat, especially if they can get Enzo Lefebvre feeding them in, who is I think European sort of football fans I've spoken to are massive fans of Enzo Lefebvre. They think he's got stunning technical ability, and we've seen glimpses of that, even if it's been a slightly interrupted stint for him at Sunderland so far. So that's the aspect. It's those four. If they can get those four on the pitch simultaneously, getting in behind Sheffield United, that's the bit that really excites me.
I don't know if this is cliche as well, but I always think of Wembley as a big pitch, and just like, if you are a counter-attacking team and if you have these players that can just drive into space, then it is advantageous in that kind of situation.
Yeah, I think so, especially also I mentioned Harrison Burrows earlier, and I think he could have could be caught in two minds, because on the one hand there's going to be a real temptation for him to fly forward beyond Gassama and get that combination play going, which could be really dangerous on Sheffield United's side. But if Harrison Burrows gets caught really high up the pitch, then Jack Robinson, who probably isn't the quickest, could get caught in a 1v1 against Elise Mienda, who's a right-sided forward for Sunderland, where he can go sort of up to either side. That could be a 1v1 that could be really dangerous. So again, does Harrison Burrows go forward and take that risk? Or does he stay back and maybe it might be easier for Sunderland to limit Harmer's influence? So that's the matchup that I'm really curious about, and I think that could have a big say in the outcome.
Okay, well, it does certainly have the look of a very, very tight affair, and good luck to both sides at Wembley. We'll move on to League One then, and this is, I was saying off camera to you, Gab, I think this is the most entertaining and intriguing of the three playoff finals. I know you're going to be in attendance at this one as well on Sunday. Leyton Orient taking
I'm there to break up any fight between Nathan Jones and Richie Wellens, Matt.
I'm paid to watch that. Yeah, I would. Special guest referee. So we've got Charlton, very strong favourites in the context of a playoff final at 8-13, and Leyton Orient out at 11-8 for the victory here. They've both got here in different ways. I think it's fair to say Orient were involved in a goal fest, weren't they? With Stockport 3-3 on aggregate, and they needed penalties to come through that game, where they were big underdogs, but ultimately their attacking lights sort of shone for them, as they have done all season. And it was a great tie. Felt sorry for Stockport. Didn't do an awful lot wrong, but Orient, delighted for them as well. We've talked about them a lot this season, and the momentum they came into the playoffs with, and a little bit of a free hit. They were the outsider of the four, and here they are. They find themselves one game from the championship. And Charlton, meanwhile, they've been probably the success story of League One, I would say, over the last 4 or 5 months. Really found some great form under Nathan Jones. They came into a tie with Wickham. They were expected to progress through. It wasn't pretty. I think it's fair to say 1-0 on aggregate. The goal coming in the 81st minute of the second leg, so we had to wait a long time for a goal. And across those two games, there was only 7 shots on target between the two sides. Whereas if you compare that to Orient Stockport, I think it was 21, 3 times as many. So it really was two contrasting ties. But Charlton found their way through via Matty Godden, who has been in great form and is obviously a very experienced forward who's been operating in these kind of leagues for many, many years, whereas Leyton Orient's key man, Charlie Kelman, it's been a bit of a breakthrough campaign, and he looks to have a fantastic career ahead of him, of course, winning the Golden Boot in League One as well. So we come into this tie, like I said, Charlton strong favourites at 8-13. They did do the double over Orient this season, 1-0 win at the Valley and a 2-1 win at Brisbane Road. So I think they are very worthy favourites. Before I go down my path with how I'm looking at this game, Gab, let's have your thoughts on Charlton and Leyton Orient, because we were both strong on Charlton to come out of the League One playoffs in our pre-playoffs preview.
Sure.
Has your opinion changed, or are you just more confident now that they're playing Orient rather than Stockport?
I wouldn't say that, you know. I think I'm going to sort of show my workings a little bit here and give you the full disclosure.
Please
I
do.
am a little bit on the fence because on the one hand, I've been very strong on Charlton. I was very strongly of the view going into the playoffs that Charlton were the strongest team. I think they've shown a real defensive solidity in the two ties with Wycombe Wanderers. They probably didn't create the volume of chances that they might have liked, but I do think that they're the most complete side and the most complete squad of the two. There is part of me that's apprehensive about the price. That I did kind of went into selecting this with the intention of picking Charlton. And when I saw the 8-13, I did sort of hesitate a little bit because you go back to Leyton Orient picked up 14 points from their first 14 games at the start of the season, but they were a little bit unlucky and they probably deserved a lot more points then. And so it hasn't been a huge surprise that the results have picked up, albeit 64 points from 32 games since then is hugely impressive from Richie Wellens' side. And obviously the big Stockport in the semi-finals on penalties as well. I think Stockport will be strong opponents and they're not to be underestimated. But for me, I look at Kane Ramsey, the right side defender, Lloyd Jones, one of the best centre-halves in League One. I look at Greg Doherty, really dynamic influence in midfield, Connor Coventry and the way that he dictates things. I look at Thierry Small and Tyrese Campbell as well, the other Tyrese Campbell, in terms of the pace and flair that they can bring out wide. And then Matty Godden's been in brilliant form in the second half of the season. And you add that to the depth that I feel Charlton have, which is superior to Leyton Orient, and I feel like they have the edge. But I could also understand why you'd look at the 8-13 versus the 11-8 on Leyton Orient, who have been in stunning form as well, and understand that also offer that could, there is potential value in that. But I would go for Charlton just because I think they're the stronger team.
Yeah, I must admit, I feel similar to you. I wanted to be with Charlton out of these two sides, but when I saw the prices, I thought, I wouldn't want them much shorter than that because Orient do have a lot of weapons, don't they? And a lot of match winners, just like we talked about with Sunderland. They do, even though they're underdogs, they're dangerous underdogs. I wonder if history will weigh down here. Obviously, Charlton very adept at this level in the Championship, in the Premier League in this millennium as well. Leyton Orient never been in the Championship, so it is a two very different mindsets, isn't it? This is a chance of achieving history, but it's a big occasion for them. And Leyton Orient maybe at the top of their kind of where they can realistically expect to be competing, whereas Charlton obviously have bigger ambitions. This is a step on the way to what they will hope is progression back towards the top of the Championship. So the mindsets are interesting there.
Yes, certainly is. And I'll give you another interesting tidbit here as well. When Leyton Orient hosted Charlton in a league game, Leyton Orient were the better team and they were 1-0 up going into injury time. And Charlton just snatched to a victory from the jaws of defeat with 2 injury time goals. And Nathan Jones made himself into something of a pantomime villain by jumping into the crowd and with this a really emphatic celebration.
Not like him.
And fair, and I think you would if he was Carlisle United manager. But,
yeah.
But,
he's an understated guy, isn't he, Nathan? He doesn't like to make a scene.
But I think that's interesting because it does open up that. Is it possible that Leyton Orient will be absolutely determined to get one over Nathan
using that
Jones
as a bit of ammunition,
have the last laugh? And so I think that's an interesting thing that just adds a little bit of spice to it. It could go either way. So
okay, well, Gab, obviously you've been tasked with picking the 2 qualifiers, and you've gone with Charlton there because of the reasons outlined. I've tried to get a little bit more creative for those who are looking for something a bit of a longer price. But again, I've found myself landing on Charlton to qualify, but I've added in goals. I want to be with the overs goals here. Over 2.5 goals in 90 minutes really stood out to me because while I told you about the Championship and the lack of goals we tend to see in the Championship playoff finals, going back over a longer spread of data, the League One playoff final has been a lot more open. Now, the last 3 have gone under 2.5 goals, but if you look at the teams in that, are probably quite big teams for the level competing in that. And I think Orient are a really interesting side here as the underdog of the 4 who've not really been at a level higher than this. It's a bit of a free shot for them. and they're a really high scoring team. Only Birmingham outscored Leyton Orient in the standard 46 game season this year. So they have got goals in them. They've got a little bit of that nothing to lose mindset. And I do think that even if Charlton score, I don't expect Orient to kind of roll over. I think they'll make a real game of it and a real fist of it. So the way I wanted to play it is backing the over 2.5 goals, but also keeping Charlton on side if it does go to extra time or whatever, because we have seen a lot of 2-2s in the League One playoff final historically. So I got a bit creative with the Bet365 bet builder. And if you back Charlton to qualify and over 2.5 goals in the 90 minutes, it's 13-5. Now, Charlton to win with over 2.5 goals in 90 minutes, so Charlton not to need extra time or penalties, is only 11-4. So there's not a lot of difference at all between this bet. But the crucial thing with this bet is if it was 2-2 or something and you went to extra time, you're still alive. You're still needing Charlton to prevail. And I do, for the reasons you agree, I do just think, however the game goes, I do think Charlton will just have a bit too much, maybe a bit too much structure, a bit too much experience and class. So I thought that was an interesting way of playing it, because I could very easily see this being 2-1 to Charlton or a 2-2 that goes to extra time. Like I said, I think this will be the most entertaining of the three playoff finals. And I think at 13-5, there's a lot of different scenarios here, particularly if we get an early goal where this becomes a very live proposition. So that's the way I'm going to play that one.
I think that's a great shout, Matt, because it also respects the fact that Leyton Orient have their threats. They've got Ethan Galbraith, who Richie Wellens thinks is one of the best midfielders in the league. They've got Charlie Kelman, who's the top goal scorer in the league with 23 goals. They've got Jamie Donnelly, who's a beautiful left-footed technician.
It's very hard to see them not scoring, isn't it, Gab?
Exactly,
even though we don't fancy them, it's hard to sit here and say I don't think Orient will score. They've just got so many threats.
I saw them go to Barnsley just before Christmas. They won 4-0, and Dana Jay that day was a real menace with down the right-hand side with his pace and power. So Leyton Orient have threats. I think Charlton definitely have threats from multiple angles, and I think they've been the best rounded team in the playoff competition. So yeah, I think I like that actually. I like how you found a bit more, because 8-13 to 13-5 is a massive difference in price. And I would probably predict over 2.5 goals if you pushed me as well. I would say a 2-1 or a 3-2. So I like your thinking with that one, and I'm happy to get on board with that.
Good. A lot of agreement, and surely that has to end at some point. But we've got one more game to tackle.
I have a feeling the disagreement might come in League 2.
Yeah, I do as well, because this is a team that I've not been keen on, and you have been quite loyal to, I think, in Walsall. AFC Wimbledon are their opponents at Wembley here for a place in League One. Again, two contrasting sides. We've got Walsall, who are the league's top scorers, against AFC Wimbledon, the best defence in League Two. Wimbledon followed the blueprint I thought they might do against Notts County. I think in the second leg they had 23% possession, but got the job done. And it is 1-0 wins in both legs for Wimbledon to seal this spot at Wembley. I don't think they've ever been, at any point this season, I've never really watched Wimbledon and been wowed by them. I've always thought they're very solid. And sometimes that's enough, particularly in a playoff campaign when there's a lot of nerves and you just need to sort of almost revert to basic functions of I don't think Wimbledon are going to be playing lots of pretty football here. I think it's going to be pretty similar blueprint to what did the job against Notts County: sacrifice the ball, stay solid, look for set pieces, look for the right opportunities to attack, and when they do, capitalise. They face a Walsall side here who in many quarters had been written off, probably unfairly, when they were taking on Chesterfield in their semi-final. I was on Chesterfield, and I was very open with that. I was on Chesterfield more from a value perspective. Had them at like 40s and 50s to go up, back them to get in the playoffs, which obviously won, so it wasn't all doom and gloom. But I was quite confident coming into that tie with Walsall, but it was a sort of a sucker punch. Two quick first half goals in the home leg for Chesterfield. Found themselves 2-0 down, and from there Walsall were able to sort of apply an element of control to proceedings. And you always felt in that third leg that in that second leg that a third goal for Walsall would be insurmountable, and so it kind of proved. They did the job well. I think they deserve a lot of credit for what they did, given what they've been through this season. Of course, they were league leaders for a large portion of the season, but not just league leaders, runaway league leaders, absolutely collapsed in the second half of the season, limped into the playoffs. But here they are, find themselves at Wembley. And to be honest, if they get promoted, nobody will care about that collapse at the second half of the season. There might be some lingering concerns in amongst the fan base about how it happened, but ultimately you remember how seasons finished, don't you? And Walsall have the chance to do it here. Now they find themselves very narrow underdogs here, which is probably a little bit surprising when you look at the overall picture, but really there's nothing to split these two sides in the betting. It looks like possibly another tight one like Sunderland, Sheffield United to me, maybe even tighter if you follow the markets. Gab, I'd love to get your thoughts on this one.
Yeah, and I think the big attraction with Wimbledon is obviously that defensive resilience they've displayed all season. I think they've conceded the fewest goals in League Two, kept the most clean sheets, and players like Joe Lewis at the back and Owen Goodman in goal have been absolutely have been outstanding for them. I think my big question mark about Wimbledon is, do they pack enough of a punch going forward? Because they had Josh McNurfield, who was outstanding in the first 2/3 of the season, I would say. And since opponents have kind of doubled up on him, I think he struggled a little bit, and Wimbledon have maybe not been able to find other avenues to get them up the pitch. Matty Stevens had scored a large proportion of their goals, and when he's dropped off, not enough other players have really contributed to make up that gap. Omar Bajil, such an influential target man for Wimbledon. He's looked a bit jaded in the last third of the season, and there's not been anyone who can do a similar job. And so I look at the last 3 games and the rate of chance creation. Although they've won 3 consecutive games 1-0 through brilliant defending and keeping opponents at arm's length, or maybe defending their box really well and Owen Goodman, pulling off those saves, I'm not sure that they quite create enough that make me really confident for them going into this game. Whereas I look at Walsall's last 3 games by comparison. Matt Sadler's made a subtle tactical tweak. He's given up trying to find a strike partner for Jamil Matt, which had been a problem for them throughout the whole second half of the season after Nathan Lowe left. He switched from 3-5-2 of some description to 3-4-2-1. Get my formations right there. So basically, only one out-and-out striker, and that's given them a lot more security in midfield. And they've actually created chances in their last 3 games and scored goals as well. So it looks like right at the last moment, Walsall have found a formula that can create chances for them, and you never know, it might get them over the line. And that's just why I would maybe have a bit more confidence in Walsall based on those last 3 games. So I've got Walsall to qualify at evens because I think they've shown some defensive qualities recently, but they can also create a high volume of chances. Whereas Wimbledon are amazing defensively, but I don't think they can create very much, and so they're going to need to score one of 2 or 3 chances.
Yeah, you said we might disagree about this game. I don't massively disagree because I think there's 2 ways that this game pans out. I think either if you want to be with Walsall, I would actually say maybe back them in the 90 minutes. They're 2-1 to win in 90 minutes. And I think there is a very strong possibility that if Walsall win this score, and then we see like the best of Walsall, kind of see why they were at top of the league for so long, and they play with that confidence. And I do believe they're a better football inside than Wimbledon, and I think it'd be very hard for Wimbledon to, if they have to go and chase the game, I think that actually favours Walsall and opens it up for them to maybe go and get second. So I think if you were with Walsall, you could make a case for that 2-1. I know obviously I'm throwing you under the bus a bit there, Gab, because you've done it to qualify treble, so you didn't really have much choice there. But yeah, that would be my thoughts on Walsall. But I do have this nagging feeling that Wimbledon are just very, very good at nullifying games. Sure. And I think playoff games traditionally are more cagey affairs than regular season games. And I think that, if they do go there with the intention to defend, then that could make for probably not the best spectacle. But from their perspective, I do kind of believe that they can do it. So obviously they're playing for a 0-0 there, or potentially a 1-0 in an ideal scenario, if that is the case. And when I look at the correct score market, I mentioned Dutching earlier in this podcast, and I'm going to actually put that into action here. I think if you Dutch the 0-0 and the 1-0 AFC Wimbledon correct scores, so if you just put the prices in, well, I think it's 6-1 for 0-0 and 11-2 for the 1-0 AFC Wimbledon. And a calculator can help you split your stake accordingly across the two to basically guarantee a 12-5 winner if either of those come in. And that's kind of because I do think that's what Wimbledon are going to be playing for.
Sorry, is this in 90 minutes, Matt?
This is in 90 minutes. Yeah, this is how it's a finish. So if you get the 0-0, it's won. Don't worry about the how it finishes in extra time or whatever. But I do think that Wimbledon, I find it a lot easier to see what their blueprint is for this game. I think they sit in. I think they sacrifice position. I think they back themselves defensively. That's the sole reason they find themselves in this playoff final. They're excellent defence, and I do have confidence in them actually against a Walsall side that I think, like I say, the only way I don't see this bet going very, very close is if Walsall score maybe in the first half. And that's why I think that 2-1 about Walsall in 90 minutes. If you fancy Walsall, maybe back them in 90 at 2-1, because that's what I don't see Wimbledon being capable of chasing this game. I think they have to play it like this. It has to be really tight, fine margins, probably not a very nice watch for the neutral, and they just grind it out, maybe get that one goal. And don't forget that the reason I'm wanting the 1-0 onside is because they've won both legs against Notts County 1-0. And I think you could argue in both games that, you know, Notts County had their chances and you know, it could have panned out very differently, but yet Wimbledon have shown this repeated knack to grind out results when often being second best. I could see something similar happening here. So yeah, that would be my 2 pence. I think, you know, just shy of 5-2 with 2 correct scores on side. I don't see Wimbledon winning this by 2 or 3. I think the only danger here is that Walsall prove too good and get an early goal in 90. So that's how I'm going to play it. But I wouldn't argue too strongly with people who want to back Walsall. I would just say consider the 2-1 about them winning in 90 minutes if you want to be with Walsall.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so that concludes our analysis of the 3 playoff finals. All that remains is for us to bring our best bets back onto the screen so you can take notes and avoid or follow accordingly, depending on how confident you are in our selections. Let's do mine first because they are a little bit more complex. Sheffield United and Sunderland, I'm going to back under 1.5 goals. Pretty simple at 7-4. That's both 0-0.
Who's your winner for that one, Matt?
Gun to the head, maybe. Heart says Sunderland, head says Sheffield United. I think actually, I'd prefer to see Sunderland go up, but yeah, I don't know. I think Sheffield United might just edge it. But like I say, I don't want to play that game where I think that's so tight. I think it'll be one moment of magic that'll decide that, or a mistake. Yeah, under 1.5 goals, 7-4. That's probably my favourite bet of the lot, to be honest. I just don't see how that turns into a goal fest. Charlton to qualify or lift the trophy and over 2.5 goals in the 90 minutes is something a little bit more creative at 13-5 against an Orient side full of goals. And the Dutch in the AFC Wimbledon 0-0 and the 1-0 win for a payout of 12-5 if either of those land for the reasons given. But as I say, I wouldn't be too strong on that because I do think there's a world where Walsall just prove their class here, particularly if they score early. Gab, you've gone for the more straight shooting to qualify, and I've also added up your treble as well. So you've gone for Sunderland in the Championship at 6-5. You're very confident. Very confident. I'm speaking for you there. You're confident on Charlton in League One, and Walsall would be your pick of the 2 evens in League Two. If you want to back the treble, Betfair are best price for that, 13-2 with Betfair. Gab, if you were just maybe urging caution on one in particular, which one worries you most?
Well, I think as part of a treble, I think Charlton makes more sense because it's one of those where you want to be have the most confidence. I am very split on Sunderland, Sheffield United. I think that it's one that really could go either way. I think Sheffield United have been, the table says they've been the better team over the course of the season.
But I suppose you're getting the price there with Sunderland, aren't you?
But some of the matchups, I'm just not. I think could possibly favour Sunderland, and with a price like you mentioned, I think the 6-5 looks good. But I think that's possibly the one that's most in doubt. Okay. So yeah, we'll see.
Well, we will. I've really enjoyed running through those, Gab. Enjoy your trip to Wembley as well for Orient Charlton. I think that's going to be a cracker. We hope you've enjoyed watching the EFL betting show this season. Gab will be back on your screens probably next week. He'll probably find something to pitch to me for next week. But no, in all seriousness, we'll probably be returning with some anti-post thoughts around July time. It'll be time to dust off those all those transfers in and transfers out and try and work out who's going to play where and all this kind of nonsense. But yeah, looking forward to it, Gab. Enjoy your break. I know you're having a little bit of time away from things and you're back in action. When can your Twitter legions expect to see you pumping out content again? Maybe June the 9th, was it?
That's when I'm back in the office. Yes, I've got a series of summer deep dives on each of the 72 Club podcasts coming out between June the 9th and sometime in mid-July, I think it is. So plenty of that. And that's basically a research project for me to look at each club and where they're at and squad and all that kind of thing. So you can check that out. And and
they'll be on your X feed, is that right, Gab?
Yes, it'll be on my Twitter feed, so you can drop me a follow here at Gab Sutton. But Matt, it's been such a pleasure to do these podcasts. I think this has been our first season, hasn't it? So
it has.
Yeah, it's been a real pleasure, and always look forward to our chats. And have a lovely summer, mate.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks to you as well, mate. And if you aren't already subscribed to us now, please do hit that subscribe button and the like button. We've got plenty of other non-football content coming your way over the summer. And as I say, we'll have the likes of Gab and Co back to dive into the anti-post market from July onwards. But good luck. Enjoy the playoff finals, and we'll see you again very soon here on Odds Now.